I rang the project manager this morning, told her about the body, and she said to just hang in there. They won't be making any unnecessary trips, apparently, and she knows as well as I do that the cold will prevent any losses in the realm of identification. Forensics will be along in the heli, which is due in 1 week. The first thing I'm doing when I get home is having a hot shower for longer than is probably healthy, and posting these logs. Returning the journal went smoothly, relatively speaking. Bending stiff fingers into place isn't the most pleasant of tasks, but I think I'm in the all clear. Back to the matter at hand. Having a bit of a hard time writing all this from the photos on my phone, but it'll do. I've cut a few parts which seem like pointless rambling, as well as pages marked by water damage and some disconcerting brown red splotches. Here it is. I'm not sure why I keep on with this journaling. In no world do I imagine its pages will see the light of any day except the wildly inconsistent sun of this place, though calling that thing a sun would be like calling a faulty light bulb a fireplace. There's no warmth or constancy to it, rather befitting for wherever we are. I also, quite literally, have all the time in the world. I guess I'm not in the world though. Not anymore. Not really. So, I'd like to describe my memories, my experiences, this godforsaken place, in as vivid detail as possible. Because that's how this place is, there's no hyperbole to be had. Its aspects, its nuances, all grim, lurid sores, competing for my attention. Perhaps it's a comfort, nothing more. Reiteration for the sake of it. I'd rather think of anything else, any place else. But here is all there is. Maintenance. With no other choice, I've learned quickly what to do and what to avoid, either empirically, alongside my fellow captives, or from their lessons. Every few, actually, just whenever we need to, we set out into the snowfield above in alternating groups of 2 or 3. Oftentimes the invisible creatures move to someplace else, leaving the path clear for us. I'd let them use my ice picks, though I made it clear that if it was my turn, I'd always have one in hand. The third member used some kind of socket wrench with a sharp stone driven into the end. The iceberg is possibly the most treacherous ground I've ever had to traverse. Fisher's hide under deceptive snow overhangs. One misstep on such unstable ground means falling 100 feet into an icy casket. That wouldn't be so bad, since you could eventually climb your way out. Only, the bullworms that tunnel deep inside the ice are quick to snatch up anything coming their way. Worse still, those see-through monsters come and go as they please. I myself have been caught, 8 odd times? The way their mandibles carve and cleave, they must be serrated, because it hurts. It really fucking hurts, and I'd rather not experience the sensation again, but we have to go searching. We have to. Most of the time, we find little, usually nothing. A beaten metal sheet or frost-blackened planks will cause the celebration. You see, our cliff dwelling doesn't stay by itself. If only it were that easy. No, the iceberg is sinking constantly, at a glacial rate, into the abyssal brine below. Perpetual snowfall packs itself down into ice over time and roughly maintains the iceberg's elevation. So we have to deconstruct, dismember the lower levels, and lug them back to the top, drive old rebar into the cliff with blunt objects, and fasten everything back together. If that's not working off, the whole iceberg's raising perceptibly over time. It tilts forwards to precarious angles, resting for drawn-out solstice, before tipping backwards again. Lose your presence of mind, and there's no second chance. Down into the freezing waters you go, torn apart by scaled monsters with their jagged spines and shark's teeth, never blessed with the mercy of death until every cell in your violated body is torn and strewn asunder. Of course, there's a respite when the iceberg leans backwards. It's not something to get complacent with. Listen to that nagging reminder telling you that, at some point, you'll be back in the same spot. That's your survival instinct talking, obsolete as it is. And even then, when you feel prepared for anything, this place always has an ace up its sleeve. Blobbers. My first introduction to this concept was, well, it was a while after my arrival. I'd like to embellish the memory, to say we were sitting around a fire, something to that effect. No chance of that. Even behind cover from the wind, it's like the warped physical laws here outright forbid sparks and flames. No, I sat beside Alexei and Nia on a pile of salt-crusted cloths. Without much else to pass the time, we'd engage in half-hearted games and hobbies. Contrary to his appearance, Yago had a strong singing voice. I'm kind of amazed he can remember any songs. The man can't recall his own name for Pete's sake. I guess it's like Alzheimer's. Music's the last to flee memory. Or so I've heard. At the time, he stood out on the platform before us. He was singing, I think it was Green, Green Grass of Home. In spite of the choppy gale, his voice carried. It was pleasant. This song in particular rang with poignant nostalgia. Once Yago finished, he stood with his hands held together. Pretty good, old man, Alexei cheered. I bobbed my head in agreement. That's really something. God knows I wouldn't have pinned you as a singer, said Nia. Yago chuckled and, for a fleeting moment, our troubles were lost. I guess we were too distracted to hear the heavy shuffling from below, because we fell back to silence when an enormous hand wrapped around the edge of the platform. Whatever pulled itself over that edge, it was no creation of any sane god. Grey, blubbery flesh rippled in the wind. A disgusting, bloated thing the size of a tractor tire peered over at us. Ahead, scattered perforations in the sides must have been ears, but it had no facial features other than a babbling, egg-shaped hole right in the middle. 2, 3 more sets of hands clambered their way up to us, somehow crawling up the eyes as if they were geckos. None of these details held a candle to what their overall features resembled. Infants. Elephant-sized, hell-spawn toddlers, crawling on all fours. Laggardly with age, Yago had no chance. Swollen, sticky fingers curled round his body, squeezing him in a grasp even world record strongmen couldn't escape. The awful harmony they made upon claiming their new plaything is etched into my soul. Gargling coos of childlike elation, deep in pitch and easily drowning out Yago's hysterics. In the brief period before they left, I watched, oblivious to the screams of Nia and Alexei, as the creatures shook him around and pulled at his limbs. All I could hear were joints and bones snapping, cracking. The creature holding Yago brought him up to the dribbling hole of its face. The hole dilated, revealing a cavernous passage of dripping flesh and, with slowness I'm sure was intentional, pushed Yago inside, feet first up to his neck. It closed around him with such pressure I could hear his body breaking, and with crushed lungs, he couldn't even scream. And just like that, they descended, leaving us with a cold, empty space, shaped like an old man. That's how it goes here. No mercy, just suffering. Endless, indiscriminate suffering. Still, there are a handful of things we can predict, or at the very least, expect. The ice. It may be logical to melt the ice and drink it. We are, after all, still subject to thirst and hunger, despite needing no food or water to live. Fresh snow from up above is okay, but the ice is bad water. It's rotten. It putrefies and becomes teeming with disease. In particular, it hosts some kind of parasite. Drink it, and they'll start breeding inside of you until your organs are rife with them. They sap any moisture they can from your body, drying you into a shriveled husk. Oh, and they're permanent. Literally no way to get them out. I mentioned boreworms before. They're not an issue most of the time. Sometimes, if you look deep into the ice cliff, you can see them burrowing within. They're lightning fast though, so I can never get a clear picture of them. From what I can gather, they're long, thick, and leech-like. Their heads open up to reveal strangely mechanical sets of spike balls which spin against each other to grind through the ice. I don't know if they're immune to the parasites. Maybe they're symbiotic. Worm eat ice, parasite take water. Who knows? This nameless hell has fates of plenty, except one. Death. I didn't know how it worked at first, but it later on became clear. Months, perhaps years after Yargo's abduction, something happened that was gut-wrenching and incredible in equal measure. About 25 feet off from us, the ice began growing outwards. Small mounds at first, swelling like rotten pustules. It was when a familiar visage began forming that it clicked, and we built a walkway across. Through some uncouth law of nature, Yargo grew in the form of an ice sculpture. Then, colour flushed his skin, starting at his fingertips and slowly spreading. He eventually broke free with a crack and a pop and fell down into our arms, vacant-eyed and nude, a grotesque and wholly unnatural birth. Yargo was never the same after that. Deference held our tongues from prying, until the curiosity got too much to bear. Even when we prodded him, asked him about what happened, not one inchoate word spilled from his lips. I shudder to think about what might have happened during his absence, at the hands of those abominations. Things that considered him nothing more than a toy to wear out. We've taken to calling them blubbers. I'd say it describes them to a T. With a honed skill at hiding, they're not too hard to avoid. The problem is hearing them approach before they arrive, because if you don't, well, no need to repeat what's already written. Past that, a worse revelation came to light. No matter what we do, no matter what happens to us, no matter how violent or peaceful the death, we'll return, spat right back out into the fray every time. No matter what. From this point, the frequency of errors and scribbling rises drastically. I find it strange, the near-instant transition from madman's scrawl to legible, comprehensive records, just a page over. As such, there's a few things left for me to post here. This reads as a fantasy, as most would have realised. In any other scenario, I'd settle on that and leave it in the past. The reality is, however, there's a naked dead body hundreds of miles out in the tundra. Forensics will look for any signs of foul play, of course, but why come out this far to dispose of a body? How? Besides, there's no major trauma to the body. Unless he was posed like some grim marionette, that's likely conclusion. The likely conclusion is he died from the cold. Emil, our geologist, wants the first half of tomorrow to confer and discuss our findings. So I'm going to get some shut-eye. It's hard, admittedly, knowing there's a frozen cadaver in walking distance from me, but at least I don't have to bear that burden alone anymore. Good night, for now.